Can we trust the reliability of Scripture? Why put our faith in the Bible? My name is Pilgrim Benham. I am a pastor in Bradenton, as well as the Dean of Students at Calvary Chapel Bible College. And a lot of people treat the Bible like the game of telephone that you and I may have played when we were children. The idea there is that you share a message with the student next to you, and the further down that message goes from person to person, from child to child, the more skewed that message becomes. It's nothing like the original message that was sent. And a lot of people assume that's how the scriptures are, the Bible, that over thousands of years, the stories were changed, they were exaggerated, or maybe they were just invented by people who were in power. But if the Bible is what it claims to be, the word of the Creator, then it's not just a piece of literature, it's the most important map for reality that we actually possess. And so today we're not looking at blind faith, we're looking at evidence. Can we actually trust the Bible? And the reality is, yes, the scriptures are the best attested document of antiquity. Historically speaking, the Bible is the most well documented book from the ancient world. So to doubt the New Testament is to essentially to doubt all of documented ancient history. So for most ancient books like the Iliad written by Homer or the works of Aristotle, we have about 500 to 1,000 years of space between the earliest copies past the original. And for the New Testament, we actually shorten that gap to just within decades. In fact, when we look at Greek manuscripts, we have over 5,800 manuscripts. And when you add the Latin, the Coptic, the Syriac, we actually have a number that jumps to over 25,000 manuscripts. We're not talking about one or two copies. And because we have so many copies, scholars can cross-reference them to filter out what are different variants. And those variants essentially just jumble up the word order or include a few typos. And so the result is that we are 99% certain of the original text. There is no core doctrine that we believe in as Christians that rests on a disputed comma here or there. So we can trust in the documentation of antiquity. We can also trust in the archaeology, from myth, as some would say, to facts. And so archaeology doesn't necessarily prove that God exists, but it does prove that the Bible's authors were not making up the setting. So for years, critics were laughing at the mention, for example, of the Hittite Empire, and just said, that's made up. We don't see this in some history. But then archaeology confirmed it. In 1993, the Tel Dan stele was discovered, and it explicitly mentioned the House of David, something that people were dismissing. Oh, that's not true, the House of David. Or the Hittite Empire eventually was discovered. Sir William Ramsay was a famous archaeologist, and he began his career intending to disprove the book of Acts. And he ended his study, by affirming that Luke was one of the greatest historians to ever live. And essentially every single obscure political title or local custom that Luke speaks about, the Dr. Luke in the book of Acts, was proven exactly right. Another reason we can trust Scripture is prophecy being fulfilled. In other words, history written in advance. And really, this is the Bible's signature. No other religious book, not the Quran, not the Vedas, not the Book of Mormon, no other religious book contains specific, multi-layered prophecies fulfilled centuries later in verifiable history. For example, hundreds of years before Jesus of Nazareth, the prophets named his birthplace, Micah 5:2, that he would come from Bethlehem. Even the exact method of his execution, crucifixion, was detailed to us in Psalm 22. And these are just two examples, but we found lots of prophecies that have been fulfilled, hundreds in fact, well before the results or the events came to be. So this is not a guess. This is not a vague horoscope that like says this could happen in the future. Or maybe you've opened up the fortune cookies at a restaurant and it says you're going to have a good turn of events coming to you this week. No, these were specific. These were actionable. These were real and these were rooted in history. These were so specific that one person in history could certainly not fit. In fact, one statistician actually found that just eight prophecies of Jesus being fulfilled would be essentially one with 30 zeros behind it, one in just almost an innumerable chance. And that's just eight, but we have literally hundreds of prophecies fulfilled by Jesus. And that's just Jesus, let alone the other prophecies of Israel, the other prophecies of the surrounding nations. And not only that, but in the scriptures, we find the harmony of science and scripture. So though the Bible isn't definitively or primarily a science textbook, when it does touch on the physical world, it's remarkably wise. So while ancient Greeks believed the universe was eternal, the Bible began with "in the beginning." And today, scientists are questioning that idea of an eternal universe, and they've come to solutions such as the Big Bang theory, where there had to be a beginning of some sort, or they observe the second law of thermodynamics, where entropy or order tends to chaos. And so we see that in the scripture. We see that the universe had a starting point. We also see that it's intelligible. So modern science was birthed by men like Sir Isaac Newton or Kepler, and it was birthed by them precisely because they believed in a rational God who wrote the laws of nature. And when you look at something that's orderly, such as a building that's been created in an urban center, you don't look at the building and say, well, that must have just gradually come together over billions and billions of years. You say, that is the mark of an architect. There was a designer. When we see intelligent design, we think this must have been a designer. If you came home and there's a beautiful picture of the Mona Lisa painted on a canvas and there's paint laying around, but your golden retriever is laying there with paint on their paws, you would either think your golden retriever has incredible artistic skill and can design, or you'd think someone is trying to trick you by putting paint on the dog's paws. Either way, intelligibility comes from intelligent life. And so we have the harmony of science and scripture, that God is a creator who designed this world and then speaks about it, reveals it to us in scripture. In fact, in Psalm 19 and in Romans 1, we learn that God's attributes, that God's nature, that some of God's ways, who he is and what he has done, has been revealed to us in creation. Not only that, but we also have internal unity with the scripture. How can I put my faith in scripture? Well, think about this. The Bible was written over 1,500 years by 40 different authors on 3 different continents in 3 different languages. Let's imagine today we took 40 random people around the world with those criteria, 1,500 years, 40 different authors from 3 different parts of the world in 3 different languages. And we asked them, write your views on God, on politics, on sexuality, on morality. What would we get? We would not have cohesion. We'd have a chaotic mess. And yet, when we open the scriptures from Genesis to Revelation, the 66 books of the Bible tells one cohesive story. There's a king who loses his people and yet gives his life to win them back. This is not the work of a committee. It's the thumbprint of a divine mind, a creator who has chosen in his grace to speak. Well, not only that, but we also have a way to explain reality that's better than the alternatives. Every worldview has to answer the big 4. They have to answer origin. Where did we come from? Meaning, why are we here? Morality, what is right and wrong? And destiny, where are we headed? And when we think about the human condition, why are we so capable of such high art and sacrificial love, yet at the same time juxtaposed against horrific cruelty? Well, the Bible is the only book that explains our dignity, essentially the image of God. We've been created in his image, and yet also not just our dignity, but our depravity, that we have fallen away from God, that we have sinned against him, that we've marred that perfect image, and that we're in need of salvation. When we look outside the scriptures, secularism has no answer for evil other than just simply bad luck. And the Bible recognizes evil as real, it's temporary, and it's ultimately going to be defeated. Now, when we think about the Bible and putting our trust in it, we have another amazing reason we can trust the scripture, and that's the power of fruit. So if the Bible were a lie, we would expect its fruit to be poisonous. But history tells us a different story, even though you'll hear it on podcasts and different people will try to poison your mind with how evil religion is, how evil specifically Christianity is. But the biblical worldview actually gives us the concept of universal human rights, that even as Americans, we have been given these rights, these inalienable rights from a creator. That comes not because we're worth something, because we're good people, but intrinsic worth, because we've been created. And so we have universal human rights. That leads to, the biblical worldview leads to the abolition of slavery, not the encouragement of it. It leads to the rise of modern medicine. In fact, hospitals were essentially founded essentially by Christians. If we look at humanitarian efforts, it's usually Christians that are on the tip of the spear helping with aid. And it's also the foundation of modern education. So on a personal level, millions of people, from drug addicts to nihilistic intellectuals, they testify that this book didn't just inform, it transformed. The scripture bears incredible fruit in an individual's life and in society. The final reason and the greatest reason we trust the Bible is because of Jesus. Jesus Christ did not view the Old Testament as a collection of fables. When pressed about marriage, he went to the Old Testament scripture. He quoted it as the final authority. He treated Adam and Noah and Jonah as historical figures. So if Jesus stayed in the grave, ignore his views. But if he actually rose from the dead, as the historical evidence and the eyewitness accounts suggest, well, then Jesus' endorsement of the Bible is the highest possible certification. We don't trust the Bible because it's a comforting security blanket. We trust it because it is coherent. It's historically grounded. It's prophetically validated, and it's experientially transformative. Critics have tried to bury this book for 2,000 years. And you know what? The hammers have worn out, but the anvil remains. The same word that has stood up to centuries of scrutiny still stands up to the needs of your heart today. There were many Caesars that wanted to put off and put away God's people. And today, Caesar is a salad and Jesus is Lord. I want to encourage you today to dive into the scriptures, to investigate the claims of Christ, to begin in the book of Genesis, or if you're unfamiliar with the words and work of Jesus, begin in the Gospel of John. Now, I mentioned earlier that I'm the Dean of Students at Calvary Chapel Bible College. We are so excited to be located in Bradenton, Florida. And we have not only an in-person, on-campus experience, but also an online platform for students who want to take classes via correspondence. So I want to encourage you to visit our website, calvarychapelbiblecollege.com, to learn more information. Even if you just had a question, an inquiry, we'd love to answer your questions. Hey, may God bless you as you continue to seek after him and his ways, and as you seek to hear from God from the pages of his divine word. I pray that you are refreshed and encouraged as you once again look to the word of the Lord and the Lord of the word. God bless you.